agendas posted in advance of the meetings so that if you're interested in attending the meetings, you know which proposals are going to be heard. We'll post recordings, we'll post meeting minutes on our 2022 code adoption website. This will be a less formal meeting than the code committee hearings. We won't be having Robert's Rules of Order. The proponent will be presenting the proposals, and then we'll have a discussion where we can make modifications live, similar to the hearings, and then we can come to the next steps between all of us that are in attendance. Today we'll be focusing on residential. So we have Robbie Schwartz from Noresco joining us. And then the agenda is also in our meeting invite. So you can pull those up as we're going through, but I'll also be screen sharing so we can see the live Word document. And just to note that these proposals that will be recommended to City Council during these offline meetings will be brought to City Council as like a different package than what the other proposals from our formal code committee hearings will be. So they won't all be lumped together. There'll be a distinguish between the two different paths there. And then Eric and Christy, if there's anything else you wanted to add, I feel like we can then jump in.
You covered everything that I would have thought to mention.
I guess just one other thing for my knowledge, helpful information. My understanding that these are just a bit more informal and this is more discussion and general agreement. Were we doing a formal vote with the committee members that are here? I was trying to recall.
I don't think we were doing anything formal like that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
That's good. So I can start. We'll just start going down the list of what's in our agenda, and I'll turn it over to Robbie to present as well. 1 second. I know I need to zoom in. So we'll be doing proposal number 49, I believe.
Yeah, so this is Robbie Schwartz. Thanks everybody for joining us today. This proposal we're talking about solar ready. So it's an important proposal for the city of Denver to begin the process of moving towards full electrification. This is not asking that or requiring that a home have solar on it. It's saying it's listing out provisions to make the home ready to receive solar sometime in the future there. So it lists out the different requirements for how to adequately provide the house the resources it needs to get solar in the future and install those things at a time where it makes sense to install it during the new construction period there.
Thanks, Robbie. I see there's a fair amount of new language added to this proposal, so I don't know if we wanted to go into some more detail or open it up to discussion. If anyone has any initial questions, we could probably start there too.
Well, that's actually a great point, Courtney, and that's a question I have for Robbie. I think is the reason that the language is underlined because it's proposed just to move from the appendix into the main body of the code, but not that the language is actually distinct from that's already in appendix. Was it AT or RB, whatever we have there?
Yes, that's correct. The language is not new to the code. It was in the appendix earlier.
It's adding the low slope roof portion though, right?
I believe that is true.
You're referring to the definition, Mike?
The definition, and then it's also included in the requirement in addition to, the area of the roof oriented between, 110 and 270 degrees of true north. Mm-hmm. He's adding the flat slope roof as well.
Yeah, I think that's why you're adding the definition, correct, Robbie, for low slope roof?
Yes.
To R202. Yeah, that's what I saw. I think there's one other section that was added and it was electrical conduit. R404.5.6, so it's under capped roof penetration sleeve. I don't think that's originally in the appendix. And I don't think I'm opposed to it, but I don't know. I thought I heard something about contractors where this item never being put in. And that's why there was some opposition to it. I don't think I'm opposed to it because I think that everyone's going to be putting in PV. So to make it a requirement for new buildings makes sense to me. But that's the only other thing that I saw that was different from the appendix.
I think the conduit is pretty crucial to be able to add that solar in the future.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that it should be in there, but I don't know if anyone else has any comments or is opposed to that being a requirement.
I'm not opposed to it at all. I know that in the past, I feel like maybe Carol has talked about the routing, and I'm not sure I fully understand. So I'm maybe just putting this out here to see if anybody else has any thoughts on this. But I feel like in the past, she has said this doesn't get done because trying to predict the routing just seems illogical to teams early on, and the routing changes later on, but I don't know why that would need to be the case. So I've never really fully followed why it's problematic.
Yeah, I would suppose that if the termination of the conduit where it's installed as part of the solar ready is not exactly where it needs to be, if a solar system is installed later, it can just as easily be extended. It's not that it would have to be entirely rerouted. It would probably just be adjusted slightly. So that's my only thought there. So yeah, overall, I'm in agreement with moving this forward. It's already adopted. The appendix itself is already adopted in 2018 IRC. So this is a very, I would suggest, a relatively minor change compared to where we're at now. So I'm supportive taking this forward as it's drafted.
So I would support that too. Is there anybody who doesn't?
Sounds like we've all come to a consensus on moving this one forward. So that's a great start to this meeting. So Tom, please make a record that this one's ready for Noresco to move forward. Great. Well, thanks everyone. I think we're going to move to 102 next. It's about the certificate. So let me zoom in and pass it off to Robbie.
So this one is about a certificate that is issued usually by potentially a third party that is working with the home through their energy code compliance, the builder, or another, in essence, approved party that is documenting these different features. In the 2021 IECC, this certificate changed slightly with the addition of the compliance path that the house is moving forward with. And if that house is using the energy rating index pathway for code compliance, you have to document that on the certificate. Some other things have been changed slightly to make it work better for the city of Denver. It's to ensure that it gets installed in a place that is will last over time. So the objective of this certificate ultimately is that it tracks the house, not the owners of the house, so that if the house changes hands, the next owners have a good idea of what has been installed in that house. And if they end up doing any upgrades, they know kind of the starting point of that house. So it's an important certificate. It's just there's just been a couple of things that have been changed to make it work better for the city so that they get it at the time of final inspection instead of some other timeline there. The other thing to note about the certificate is that if you're using the prescriptive path and codes, there's no software that will generate the certificate. So it will have to be self-generated on an Excel sheet or a Word document or something like that. If they're doing a compliance path that has a software that helps with that compliance, then it's generally generated out through that software.
So Robbie, is this just as simple as posting the HERS rating or the certain sheets from the HERS rating that had this information on it?
It is not no, it's a separate certificate that the HERS software can generate there.
Okay.
And Robbie, you mentioned a couple changes. I guess I'm trying to understand where those are because I'm only seeing a couple underlined items. Are there other items that we should have underlined here?
I guess so. It came, this language came from the 2021, so I guess it should be underlined. Number 7, for example, the code edition under which the structure was permitted and the compliance pathway. That is new to this certificate requirement since the 2018. And then number 6 as well, for buildings where the energy rating index score is determined in accordance with section R406. That's new to this certificate requirement in this new adoption.
And per the supporting information here, this is something that we currently enforce by policy. Mike Walton and Antonio, I'd be curious just to hear what this looks like from the plan review and from the field inspection perspective in our current standard of practice.
From plan review, we don't deal with this often because this just gets posted in the field. So this is something the inspectors would see.
And it's posted at final, not at it's generated at final, not at plan review.
Sure. Okay. All right. Antonio, are you in a place where you could jump in here and just talk about how you guys, if or how you guys are looking at this in the field currently?
I'm sorry, Eric. I just voicing in on listening right now. I'm running inspections at the same time, so I do apologize for being late.
Oh yeah, no worries. Are you at a place where you can comment here, or do you need to mute for a minute?
If I could mute for just 1 second, then I'll get right back on it.
Yeah, no worries.
So I'd like to point out, we just underlined 6 and 7, but 6 and 7 are in the base 2021. So I don't think it needs to be underlined here because it's base code language.
Yep.
The only edits I see are in that first paragraph requiring it to be posted at the final inspection and clarifying the space conditioning equipment.
Yep. Thanks, Chuck. I agree. And I don't think there's, I don't see a requirement on here for any kind of, and maybe I'm missing it, so I apologize if I am, but like a signature or an indication of who created this document is, and is that something that I would say maybe as the AHJ we feel would be useful information, just in terms of the accuracy of information that's here, if there's a question about it, or is that something that, you know, we just leave up to inspectors? I could probably go either way, but just to have a document, you know, slapped on a wall somewhere with a bunch of values on it, but not knowing, you know, who created it, it seems a little questionable to me. I'd appreciate any feedback on that.
Yes, sir.
Just from the perspective of the national code and how it's being adopted in other jurisdictions, it's not a requirement that I'm aware of in any other jurisdiction in the Denver metro area or along the Front Range.
And maybe it ends up being a hardship. I'm not exactly sure, but like I said, I'm not super passionate about it either way. So if that's the case, then with the language as it's drafted seems fine. We're just codifying policy and making it a little easier to enforce, quite frankly. So I'm good to move forward with this as well.
Sounds good. Is there anyone that's opposed to this moving forward? I'll take that as a no. So great, we can move on to 77.1.
This proposal is a proposal for the Denver Green Code, which is adding a potential new requirement, depending on what happens here, to require drain water heat recovery units to be installed in homes. Drain waste heat recovery is a proven technology that captures energy that normally goes down the drain back to Denver wastewater and transfers that heat back into the water tank. And because it's a proven technology and is being used successfully in new construction, it was deemed to be ready to move into the Denver Green Code as that is an optional code, so that we can begin to get some experience with it in the field and understand how it might help us in our future goals.
Well, I think my only comment here is I've looked at this in the past, and it's been a while, mind you, but two things pop into my head. First, as we move to all electric, are there any complications associated with doing this in a heat pump water heater scenario? I don't know the answer to that. And then two, when I have looked at this in the past, the cost versus the amount of energy saved seemed to be way out of line for us to implement this in our homes. We couldn't get past the cost versus benefit ratio when we looked at this in the past. It just wasn't saving that much energy for the amount of dollars we had to put into installing it in the home.
So to speak to those 2 points, Bill, first, the drain waste heat recovery is completely on the waste side of the equation. It's not on the generation side of the equation, so it would have no impact on a heat pump water heater or any water heater at all. It's the water that is hot water that's taken from a shower, for example, down the waste line through the heat recovery and then back to the water heater. So the water heater take the cold of the water heater goes through the recovery system and then back to the water heater, and those two water streams never cross each other.
Got it.
With regards to cost and whatnot, I think that's true, but with any new technology, we need to begin to use it more to create demand and bring the cost down. So that's really the only comment that I think is applicable to your concern.
Robbie, question for you just regarding the particular values, and maybe this is something that came out of the studies that support this technology, but we indicate that the system shall be installed in dwelling units having 2 or more full bathrooms. So is that 2 or more full bathrooms basically the minimum volume and or usage that is necessary for this? Or can you just explain where that 2 came from, and you know, we're talking about 2 full bathrooms versus number of occupants. I mean, if you have 2 full bathrooms but only 1 occupant, that's a lot different than 2 bathrooms and 6 occupants. Can you talk through that just a little bit?
Yeah, so it's again based off of the number of showers really in that unit. And if you're trying to, I think to Bill's earlier concern, if you're trying to capture the heat off of one bathroom, it's really not cost effective. So the minimum that would make it in the realm of cost effectiveness and to bring it into the market would be at least two bathrooms that were both waste lines going into one output in the house, and then you could capture more heat and make it more economical to do.
So I want to kind of follow up on that a little bit, though. I mean, if it's based on 2 showers, the assumption has got to be that 2 showers are being used. So I wonder, and maybe I'm just getting too far into the weeds on this, but do we need to specify then, you know, two full bathrooms, or, you know, 2 showers with a minimum of 2 occupants, or, you know, something like that? You know, again, because like I said, if you've got a two full bathroom house and only 1 person living there, you're not getting the advantage of those 2 showers.
Yeah. Well, we can never be assured of the number of occupants in any unit that we're using. So we always use bedrooms or bathrooms as a proxy for that. So for ventilation, for example, we use the number of bedrooms plus 1 as a proxy for the number of people that are in the house. And in this case, they're using 2 bathrooms as a proxy for the usage of what would go through the drain waste heat recovery.
I'm just trying to think through the logic here to see if, and I don't have a problem that I'm raising here. I'm more just trying to make sure that we're not unfairly penalizing anybody in a manner that we're not meaning to. You know, I'm the random person who wants to go out and build my 5,000 square foot home and live in it by myself. And I have to do the waste heat recapture. And then here's a family of 6 who wants to go and make a little small home, and they don't do the waste heat recapture. They're not getting the benefits of it, but I guess nobody's being penalized. So maybe there's not a problem.
Yeah, I think it's what Bill was saying. It's more about the payback period for the system, and that in that, you know, five bedroom bathroom house with 1 person, the payback is going to be huge. Whereas if they did install it on the you know, 2 bathroom house with 6 people, the payback is going to be a lot quicker because you've got a lot more, you know, a lot more volume going through there. Chuck, are there any questions or concerns you have about this from like a, you know, fixture technical perspective, anything like that?
No, I mean, Robbie pulled, I mean, the bottom half of the proposal with the listings and the pressure drops, that's straight from the 2021 IECC. So I'm good using those numbers because they've been vetted at a national level. So the bottom half of the proposal, I'm totally good with. The top part, you know, I think it's good to not require it on like a 1 bathroom, because 2 kind of indicates a little more size, and so there might be a little more opportunity for payback on that. I would like to see a payback analysis. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? You know, what is that? But this is green code, so it is a stretch code. It's not something we're mandating in everyday construction. So overall, I'm good with the proposal.
Thanks, Chuck. Bill, did you have any particular values that you could share with us on that in terms of the studies that you've done, or just investigating this?
You know, most of the studies that we did were a while back on this, and as a home builder, we really base most of our decisions on the HERS rating, and they just didn't make any substantial movement in the HERS score when we looked at it. So to add additional cost to our house for no to extremely minimal gain in the HERS score of a point or no points, depending on which home we were talking about, it just didn't seem practical for us to invest in that technology. It just wasn't providing the energy savings through that metric, at least. I don't, this being a stretch code and a voluntary code, I don't have a bunch of angst against putting it in there and getting some market test on it. Has anybody looked at the direct benefit to the goals of Denver? I mean, there may be energy improvement scenarios that just the benefit is small enough against the cost that it's better to spend that money elsewhere to get closer to Denver's end goals. And I've never looked at this outside the realm of a HERS score, so I can't speak to how it helps Denver reach its carbon goals for the future.
This is Jeff Slaw. I'm proxying for Elizabeth Gilmore, and I just wanted to add on the payback side, this can impact your sizing. You can reduce your sizing on water heaters, and that should offset your payback. You're getting the hot water back to the hot water heater at the time that the hot water heater is trying to recover. So it doesn't seem like a lot of payback, but it can be substantial.
I guess I've never looked at downsizing a water heater. You just do like a 50-gallon instead of a 65-gallon. Is that what you're referring to, or?
I don't have exact numbers on it. I've just read that in the technology that it can be used to offset in terms of sizing.
Just talking about cost and payback, I just Googled and found energygov.org or energy.gov. They listed the cost is between $300 and $500, and the paybacks range from 2.5 to 7 years. So that doesn't seem way out of bounds.
I mean, is that just material cost? That surprised me. That number seems small from what I recall from previously looking at it. And it might have a lot to do with, plumbers not readily purchasing and installing that on a regular basis, and me getting a much higher cost because it's a new product.
No, and that could definitely play into it. It does not list what the cost entails. Is it the materials and the labor, profit, all of the above? Because I have seen
it's definitely just the heater itself or the recovery device itself.
Okay.
It would cost more if you included installation and whatnot.
Okay. Thanks, Robbie.
So I think as has been mentioned already, as a green code or a stretch code provision, this seems reasonable to me to advance. I think Bill made a really relevant point in terms of if this is actually the best technology, maybe to put funding sources toward versus something else that may have a better payback or higher efficiency or achieve Denver's goals more readily. I think that's something that's really smart for us to be in tune with. With that said, we won't have a good way to compare it without getting some of these installed. So I would suggest that we move forward with putting these in a green code and seeing if we can get a few of them built, and then maybe we can pull some data in terms of the use and the value, not only in terms of economics, but in terms of comparative value with other technologies as well. So that's my thought on this one.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that and align with moving this forward. put into the Denver Green Code specifically. Is there anyone that feels that that's not the right move or wants to discuss any further?
I think my only question of that is what's been presented to me is that the green code is kind of step one to the next Denver code. So, if it gets into the green code and then it's a relative shoe-in to codifying later, I'd certainly want to have deeper conversations about it. If it's a way to learn and assess whether it's a good code improvement for the future, I think I'm in agreement with what's been said already.
Yeah.
And the intention is definitely choice B.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's not an automatic progression into the model codes during the next code cycle. It's a way to evaluate the best options and to gather some data on some of these systems.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We will move this one forward for the rest as well and move on to 13.1. There we go.
Yeah, so this proposal, I believe, is the only proposal that is being put forward for the existing home section of the IECC. Existing homes are going to be a very important part of the mix of meeting the Denver goals in the future, and there's some incremental steps that are being taken here to figure out how to ultimately look at existing homes in the future. That really hasn't been decided yet. What this proposal does is in change in space conditioning section, it adds the energy rating index pathway for compliance. In that section, there's already a building performance pathway, but as we have heard earlier, the energy rating index pathway is a important pathway for us to be able to benchmark the efficiency of the homes and their trajectory towards ultimately zero energy. And if that is the trajectory that also happens for existing homes, it's important to begin that process now. We don't know that that's going to be the trajectory. I'm just saying that it gives us the option of using that metric on existing homes as well. The second thing it does is in the building envelope section, this is the additions section. It gives Denver the option of allowing an approved third party to do inspections for energy upgrades or energy features that have been installed in an addition. And then the last thing it really does is in the lighting section in the 2021 IECC, all lighting is required to be high efficiency lighting. And so this just brings that requirement from the new homes section into the existing home section for alterations and for alterations of that section.
So, Robbie, I've got to be honest, I'm having a little trouble understanding item 4, the way that it's drafted as I read that. I think that's just one sentence that I'm honestly getting a little bit lost. I'm wondering if you can maybe help break that down a little bit for me so that I can understand the application of the language here in item 4.
Yeah, so there's a part of the code that talks about assessing the existing building separately from the existing building and the addition. or alteration. So this section is saying that you do energy rating index of the addition and the existing building, because you can't look at them as two separate entities. We're looking at the house in its entirety here. And showing that its energy use is less than or equal to the energy rating index of the existing building there. So you're trying to show that it's equal to, that the addition plus the existing building is equal to or less than the existing building was before the addition was added or alteration was added.
Okay, I understand what you've just said. I'm not sure that the language reflects that. To me, it looks like it says comparing the addition and the existing building and any alterations to the existing building and the addition and any alterations.
Yeah.
And, sorry, maybe I'm just being thick here.
No, there should be a period after existing building, and then the addition and any alterations that are part of the project shall comply with section R406 in its entirety. That's how it would mirror the performance exception.
Yeah, there's also an amendment in our current amendments. There's a section R502.1.3 that has very similar language, but I think the intent of Robbie's amendment is to reflect that. But it's different because it's only comparing the ERI to the existing building and not, I think Mike was pointing to this, not the existing building addition and alterations. So I think it's fine because I think the intent is fine since we've accepted something similar in the past code cycle, but I think I agree with Eric, it's worded awkwardly. Just the way it's written is it's confusing to me at least.
I think I imagine you added that period there. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we just need to maybe just wordsmith this a little bit to maybe try to clean up the language, but make sure that we're not changing the intent. I think even just the first part of the first sentence reads a little awkwardly. I wonder if perhaps it should say where complying with section R406, the energy rating index of the addition. So delete in accordance and delete that and right there as well. And then in the second line towards the end, instead of saying is less than or equal to, should that say shall be less than or equal to?
So, I mean, we're wordsmithing it now, but it is the way Robbie had it written once we added that period reflected the existing exception 3 that's right above it that's staying in the code.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm not intending to change the intent of the proposal. I'm just trying to get it to read a little more clearly. So I would definitely love some feedback if we're changing the intent here.
I would say of option 3 and 4, if the intent is similar, it is using the performance path and the ERI path in number 4, that we should try to keep the language as similar as possible.
I'm wondering if Mike or Alan, if it's easy to copy the language of section 3 into the chat, so we can compare that. Or am I missing that? Is it that's not on here, right?
It's not on there, so we'd have to try to copy it out and paste it in there. I think one of us should try to do that.
Yeah, but that ain't like we're complying in accordance with section R406. That mirrors the language in 3.
Oh, that didn't work out well.
Hey, Eric, I got a question either for you or for Robbie as it pertains to the existing building code. I mean, if we're looking at 708, and I know this is green code, but it's clearly written in black and white that they don't need to comply unless they're going into a different type, like Chapter 11 under 1104, and they're going into additions, which is a different story. But how do we incorporate that if they're wanting to go with the existing building code?
You're, if I'm understanding you, you're talking about contrasting the IEBC with the existing building language in the IRC.
Yeah, that's right. I think we're going to have some conflicting language there that we need to evaluate both books there.
Yeah, I agree, Antonio, and the idea is to do that as part of well, it's essentially part of the cleanup that we usually do at the end of the process to make sure that we didn't make amendments in one code that conflict with the amendments in another. And then the most current decisions of the committee would take precedence, or potentially the more restrictive of the two provisions that are similar would take precedence. But with that being said, is there a specific section? I think you mentioned maybe 7 something, but that doesn't seem related. That's not related to what's on the screen here now, is it?
No, not. I'm just worried about what we're going to write, and that's something we'll have to clean up later. I just thought I'd bring it up, and thank you for answering that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It makes sense, Antonio, and that's part of why the work that we're doing right now on the screen is to try to get consistency of the language instead of editing it a little bit, but that's within the same code versus between codes.
Thank you.
I'm trying to get this so everyone can read it. That's probably too small.
Mike pasted it in the chat.
Oh, he did. Good. Thank you. The image.
I agree. The wording is, you just get lost in it. I don't think we want to go back into editing another section, but that's really hard to read.
Yeah, I mean, item 3 is worded pretty poorly. I would almost suggest we just clean them both up. I mean, I would not advocate for matching the language in 3 with the language of item 4 and have them both read poorly or be confusing. I'd rather clean up 3 and 4.
Does doing that, Eric, add a whole new process and introduction and public hearing and comment, or can that be folded into this same one? Maybe a question for
The idea
Courtney.
wouldn't be that the idea would be not that we're changing the intent or the application of the code language, just that we're clarifying it so that it's understandable. And that, you know, designers can design to it and we can enforce to it. That's why when I was making my comments earlier regarding item 4 and the edits, I wanted to ensure that we weren't changing the intent of that code language, just that we were trying to clean it up.
Yes, it's a language improvement for sure. I'd advocate.
So I would go back and say, Stone, whether we edit it in 3 and copy it to 4, edit it in 4 and copy it to 3, saying where complying in accordance with section R, to say where complying with, so delete in accordance. And then I think the and after the section number should be deleted. And then this is where it gets a little more challenging in terms of the kind of the middle part of the sentence here. But I think what needs to happen is after the word project and the comma on the second line, instead of the word is, I think shall be. So now I think those two are, I believe those are consistent, and I don't think I changed the intent, but I'm certainly open to feedback on those.
I guess if that does that language exactly mirror one another then? And if so, does it need to be 2 different exceptions?
Well, one's for 405 and one's for 406, because 405
Understood.
is the annual energy cost and the 406 is the RI.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any additional feedback or opinions or questions or disagreements on editing that? And Robbie in particular, do you have any opposition to the way that we've tweaked that a little bit? I don't believe it changes the intent, but I'm certainly open to feedback if we think it did.
No, I think it looks great the way you edited it.
Any other discussion then on these items? You know, 4 in particular, but 3 with the simultaneous edits there. All right, then let's just take a quick look at our 503.1.4 for the lighting alterations there. And so, Robbie, your point was that code is going to require all new lighting to be, did you say high efficacy or high efficiency, or what was your comment there on this change for deleting?
Yeah, so in the past, the requirement has been a percentage of the lighting had to be high efficiency lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 2021, it's 100%. All the lighting in a new house needs to be high efficiency. So this section is dealing directly with our 403 alterations. So if you're doing an alterations, all the lighting in that alteration would need to be high efficiency instead of a percentage of it.
Okay, I want to play the devil's advocate, just putting a design professional hat on for a second and ask the question, what is a new lighting system that's part of an alteration? I'm not understanding what a new lighting system is and isn't an alteration, because I mean, I might just be changing out, lamps or fixtures, but that's not a new system. It's a different fixture. So do we want to say new lighting fixtures that are part of an alteration?
Base
I-
code, base
yeah.
code says systems.
Yeah.
But it's not a defined term, is it?
Nope.
So maybe it's a moot point, really, because all we're really doing is tweaking the 10% exception.
Yeah. Like, unless there was some, it'd be interesting, like, to know from Carol's point of view, has there been confusion between a fixture? I mean, and I've heard her reference the term fixture and say fixtures is meant for plumbing, not electrical or lighting. So, not knowing enough about the correct jargon for electrical, I'd almost say stay base code.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chuck. I agree as well. All right, so does anybody have any concerns then about eliminating that exception? All right, so with that, I would advocate we move this forward with the revisions as they're on the screen.
Sounds good. Anyone opposed to that or want further discussion? If we're good to move on. Number 17 is the next one for base code.
So this proposal is in the R402 section of the code. It's important to highlight that the R402 section was previously labeled prescriptive section, and in the 2021, the word prescriptive and the word mandatory has been removed. And so there are 12 items in this R402.2 section that are requirements, in essence, for how you install something, a feature that is required in the code. And that feature is required whether you're using the prescriptive path or the performance path. A better example of that than this section would be attic eave baffles that are in the same section. So if you're in the past, there was confusion that if you were doing a performance compliance alternative, that you didn't have to necessarily install attic eave baffles in a ventilated attic assembly, for example. So this is all about installation, and in this particular case, it's a requirement for how you install crawl space insulation. That is a requirement, again, for how you install it, because it's not talking about R values that could be traded off here. There's been a lot of confusion and with regards to installing insulation, especially for the item that's been struck out here, is this additional 24 inches horizontally. So we see most crawl spaces not insulated on the vertical wall, and then in addition, horizontally 24 inches. So this proposal is a slight change to address insulation that's been installed on exterior walls, and then insulation that's been installed on interior walls, and just making sure that it's clear that regardless of where you install it, it needs to be installed correctly, and it needs to be installed covering the full crawl space wall. The horizontal portion has been taken out because it's been shown that it's not really necessary from the perspective of saving energy. So it's really a cleanup, largely because it's what we now call a requirement. Used to be called a mandatory requirement.
So, I mean, by removing that horizontal 24 inches, are we becoming less restrictive with that? In terms of spelling it out on the interior, exterior of the wall, doesn't footnote C handle that already in table 40213? So it feels like we're just getting less restrictive with this.
Well, the reality is that 24 inches in horizontally in modeling is proving that it's a waste of material, a waste of, in essence, time and productivity. It's not saving us energy.
And that's
As
based
long as
on
the-
studies
as long as
that
the
we have
full-
available?
I'm sorry?
That's based on studies that are available, or?
It's based on energy modeling that's been done. And I'd have to go back here to the table to, you're saying in the insulation table, footnote
C.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it says that you can install on the interior or exterior side. Although a lot of compliance options don't take you back to this table specifically. So you end up not seeing that footnote there. So this section is mirrored now in the 2021 IECC in the mandatory requirements tables that are in the R405 section and the R406 section. So they would now see that you have how you need to install things. It's also there for the prescriptive compliance options as well there.
Ravi, I'm wondering, to the point about the horizontal, removing the horizontal, like you're saying, it showing up in modeling that that's not effective. I'm wondering, I guess in real world application, are like, have we taken like thermal cameras to look at that implication? I'm just wondering if the modeling's reflecting that real world implication.
Yeah, as long as the insulation is fully covering and extending downward, for example, in the exterior installation says from the sill plate to the bottom of the footing, and on the interior side, fastened at the foundation and extended downward from the top of the sill plate, which is often an area that doesn't get insulated at the top of the wall, to the bottom of the where the crawl space dirt floor is adjacent to the foundation wall. As long as it's covering the extent of the foundation wall, we're not seeing thermal imaging or modeling that's showing that there's heat loss in that location there.
Robbie, is bottom of footing accurate? Like, how do you go across the top of the footing and back down again practically?
It's
In the detail
I
plan,
should
you
say
have
top of footing.
terminating it, yeah, into the top of the footing, right? You terminate
Yes.
at the bottom of the wall, top of footing.
Yeah.
Hey, Robbie, when you say sill plate in both options 1 or 2, I think you touched on it in your previous response. Is that sill plate of the wall or sill plate that the floor framing's sitting on? I'm assuming it's the wall is your intent. So that gap between the wall sill plate and the floor framing sill plate is insulated. Is that correct?
It would be the sill plate connected to the foundation. So usually the sill plate connected to the foundation, your floor system is on top of that sill plate, and then your rim joist board.
So that gap is also, that's accounted for, that gap where the rim board is that fill insulation too, or is that insulation stops at the top of the sill plate? Because I think the code language says downward from the floor, which would imply that the insulation goes all the way to the underside of the deck.
The rim joist is considered part of the above grade wall.
Okay.
In most applications. So your R value requirement would be associated with your wall requirement.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
So did we want to add any language clarifying the sill plate, or should we leave it as is?
We just need to edit that top of the footing, right? We get that?
Yeah, I did add that here. Am I missing that anywhere else? I just want to make sure.
You got it. Sorry, I was looking at my other screen where I have it up.
No.
Coming back to the horizontal insulation conversation for just a minute, Robbie, were you saying that the horizontal insulation application showed no additional benefit, or that it was actually worse than the vertical option?
Well, first in the past, it wasn't an option. It was supposed to go down vertically and then extend horizontally. So you had to do both applications. And I would say the majority of time in the field, we didn't see the second part of it. You would never see it extended horizontally. There's just wide inconsistency of application and enforcement there. And we're not seeing any detriment to the performance of the assembly when that horizontal application is not done in the field.
To be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about removing the horizontal piece. You're saying it's not helping, but I guess I'm seeing it as it's not hurting. So I'm a little nervous about removing something that could be beneficial in some way. And I think I need some more information or more studies about removing that piece, the horizontal aspect.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of what I was thinking as well, Courtney. And I'm wondering, Robbie, could you share some of the modeling that you're referring to in the substantiation or supporting information section that shows it? And I don't mean like right now, but I wonder if you could maybe provide a handful of models for this group to just kind of compare and contrast, so that we could actually see the difference. Do you have those available?
I can put something together. Yeah.
Would that be beneficial to this group? I don't want to waste any of Robbie's time either. But would that be?
Yes.
you know, advantageous to agreeing to remove the horizontal portion? Or are we still gonna feel maybe not okay with that?
I think it's worth looking at if there's concerns about it. You know, of course, from a builder perspective, whenever we're looking at something like this, making sure that we're putting our dollars in places that actually have an impactful difference. You know, it needs to be, I mean, everything will trickle down to the consumer and will become part of that cost of that home or that remodel project that they're trying to do. And so I think we need to be prudent in where we require additional costs to ensure that it actually is providing the intended benefit that's supposed to come with it. And where we are unsure of that, we should be cautious about adding that additional cost.
In this case, I think it would decrease cost because you would use less material.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Bill, and I certainly respect that. I think I would just like to see more information on if we remove that or does it make sense? Is it really a point? And I understand like you don't want to put your money, or no one wants to put their money where it's not of value. So I would, Eric, I would be in favor of seeing more information from Robbie.
Okay. The just as a side point, this proposal has passed the first round in the 2024 IECC, just as a reference point. But I'll get you some modeling information.
With that 24 horizontal removed?
Uh-huh.
Yep. And then the edit there that's for the vented or unvented crawl spaces is that what's the justification there for vented?
That is existing language. Oh, I'm sorry. This is with regards to the class 1 vapor retarder requirement. So class 1 vapor retarder and the moisture that it's preventing from moving up into the building is a pertinent issue regardless of if it's a vented or unvented crawl space. So that class 1 vapor retarder should be installed on the dirt floor in both applications.
So, I mean, a couple questions on that. In terms of the supporting information, you mentioned kind of the first step from a radon control perspective. I feel like we shouldn't commingle code requirements. If the vapor retarders for radon, we should leave that in the radon, you know, section, the appendix. But also, I would say, I mean, the point of the vented air spaces so that you have, or the vented crawl spaces so that you have airflow, and especially in our you know, arid or semi-arid climate, you know, granted, we generally, compared to other parts of the country, aren't having you know, these kinds of moisture issues. Not that they don't exist at all. And I think there's maybe a bigger question about
So
spaces in general.
yeah, I mean, if you were considering outlawing vented crawl spaces, that would be a different conversation. But the reality is that the existence of a vent doesn't mean that air is moving through the vent. And the vent just really becomes a low-side hole for stack effect in the house. And so you end up the moisture in the floor and the moisture in the dirt, even though it's dry, is always, even though the dirt appears to be dry, there's always moisture drive from the soil into the crawl space and then ultimately up through the floor insulation into the house by the stack effect driver there. And that all crawl spaces, all dirt that are associated with the house should be covered with a class 1 vapor retarder.
Eric, I'm wondering if there's, if you want more information from Robbie on the vented versus unvented, if there's moisture issues that are potential there. I mean, it sounds like we're going to come back to this proposal regardless. So if there's any answers we can get between that time, for more clarification.
Yeah, I mean, quite frank, from more of a, I don't know, personal opinion perspective, I don't have any opposition to, you know, putting a layer of plastic over the soil in the crawl spaces, whether they're vented or not. I just want to make sure that I understand, you know, the intent of the provision for a vented crawl space, since that is, you know, for all homes built with vented crawl spaces, that's a significant change to, you know, now add that layer and to adhere it to the foundation. Robbie, is this by any chance something that also went through the 2024 IECC group?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't think I need any more information on it. I just want to make sure I understood it better. So really, I think for this particular proposal, from what I'm hearing, we'd just like to see a bit more data on the 24-inch horizontal illumination. All right, should we move on?
It sounds good. You are making some great progress today. The
Don't
next
jinx it.
one, sorry, Chuck. The next one is P24.4. I will zoom in, and this is for base code.
Yeah. So this section, similar to the last section, is in the has been reclassified as a requirement, meaning that it's a requirement in the prescriptive paths, and the performance paths, which it was before, but it wasn't as clear as it is now. This code change proposal also reflects in the first bullet there, the new section for floor installation requirements. Floors are considered, floor insulation is required wherever you have conditioned space separating unconditioned space. So in an unconditioned basement, it would be the same requirement as if it were a floor over a garage or a cantilever as well. So it's making clear that new section R402.2.7 would be a requirement for basement unconditioned basements there. The other thing that this proposal takes into account is that basement insulation is often a tradable item. So the code currently, well, would be requiring or 19 insulation in there. And a lot of builders that use a performance pathway will trade it to a traditional R11 blanket insulation. So it's just making sure that we're looking at the right R value at the time of the time of inspection. And then the other reality that this code change proposal addresses is that insulation, like in the crawl space, is installed sometimes on the exterior of the wall and sometimes on the interior of the wall. And we want to make sure that the entirety of that foundation wall is covered with insulation. That's the background for the proposal.
One thing I would initially just want to bring up is if we want to clarify that top of footing here too. That's just a minor detail.
Well, as written, this is amending the 2018 section, right? Not the 2021, which has been rewritten.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because in 2021 it's 40228. In 2018 it was 40229. It looks like that's what's getting amended here is the 40229.
Yes, it should be R 402.2.8.1 basement wall insulation installation.
Sorry, Robbie, you said basement wall.
Insulation installation.
And the language that's been struck, that's going to be different too.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, you're spot on. And it looks like that was missed in the creation of this proposal. And so I think you would have one option one would be to just disapprove it. The other option would be to allow it to be brought back and corrected.
I guess without fully understanding what is in the current version, how different would this proposal be if you modified the 2021 IECC? Are there still modifications on top of that?
So in the basement wall insulation installation section, it's one sentence that says, where basement walls are insulated, the insulation shall be installed from the top of the basement wall down 10 feet below grade or to the basement floor, whichever is less. So this proposal would probably strike all of that and then just replace it with everything here would be underlined except for the stricken portion. But again, I think that I'm not sure it's worth the time of the committee, since this mistake has been made. So I think you should, I would suggest that you proceed by either disapproving it now or allowing it to be brought back so that you could see it in its entirety.
It seems like the only item that is not already part of the 2021 language is number 3. The interior basement wall insulation shall extend downward from the interior edge of the sill plate to the finished floor below. Because it seems like if we didn't adopt this proposal for everything else, it's already in the 2021 code. It's just worded a little bit differently in the 21 than it was in the 18. But it's conveying the same information.
If I'm hearing you, Eric, it sounds like the right choice is to just reject this because it's already addressed.
I'm just on my screens, I'm just comparing the 2021 model code language to this proposal and trying to find the correlation there, but I'm not sure that I found the correlation for item number 3.
Well, looking at 2021 R402.2.8.1, it says the installed from the basement wall down to 10 feet below grade or to the basement floor, whichever is less. So yeah, I guess this is a little more restrictive. If the basement ceiling was more than 10, if the basement was more than 10 feet deep, I guess they could not insulate that, whatever that gap is. I just haven't seen many basements 10 feet deep. So, I mean, it seems like this would address a small percentage that's not already.
Robbie, you've mentioned 2 different options. What would be your recommendation?
Well, personally, I'd like the opportunity to bring it back because I need to figure out why I need to figure out exactly why this happened, and I'm not sure why it happened, and so I need.
So let's give it back to you then and have you take a look at it as related to the 2021 language in 402.281 and determine if we actually even need a proposal for this. And if we do, then you can come back with edited language.
Yeah.
All right.
That sounds good, thanks. And Robbie, we can work together on bringing this back into the agenda, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is P20.1. And I believe this is the combination of some of the other proposals, Robbie, that you did before.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask that because the link, it's linking to just one of the old ones. So what you're showing is it all brought in together into the table in its entirety?
I believe so. Maybe that link wasn't updated on the website, but does this look, I mean,
Yes.
everything's in the same table, right?
Yeah. Let me pull that over here. Let's see. So this proposal is based off of the air barrier, air sealing, and installation criteria. This table is an important table to help ensure that builders are successful at achieving the requirement of 3 air changes per hour in our climate zone, and tighter if potentially some other proposals go through. It's very similar, and actually its generation came from the Energy Star thermal enclosure checklist and has been brought into code years ago, actually, or versions of the code that are much earlier than this version. This is trying to clarify language in this code so that people have a better understanding of what's actually required. And there are a number of sections that were proposed to be heard separately that have been combined into this proposal, starting with ceilings and attics, and then above grade walls and moving downward. A lot of what this does is again, adding more clarification and simplification of the language, hopefully, to make it clearer of what needs to be installed there. And then also referring back to that 402 section that I referred to earlier, that are requirement sections for how you actually install things, and ensuring that there's continuity between that section and this table requirement there. I don't know if you want me to go through each section individually there. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at this, and maybe our time would be better if you had specific questions.
So Robbie, I guess because the link's not updated with this one on the website, I don't feel like everyone's had a chance to. So I think it'd be helpful if we went through them, unless anyone else wants to jump in and ask questions.
Okay. So with regards to ceilings and attics, the first change in the air barrier and air sealing side is the language that's really trying to get at what we're using air barriers to separate. So we're separating conditioned space from unconditioned space. And to make that clear, that language is used kind of throughout the table, so that we're always clear that we're separating. We're using air barriers to separate conditioned from unconditioned space. The attic access opening, we don't see it as much in Colorado, I think, as in other locations, but often the gasket, well, often the attic hatch is being sealed shut or caulked shut completely. And the objective of that attic hatch is that you have the ability to repeatably enter that attic access. So we want to make sure that it's not caulked shut. Attic accesses and doors on the right side of the column here, the installation column, should be insulated to the same R value as the wall or ceiling that it's penetrating, and that's just made more clear here. And then the requirement to use attic eave baffles when you are using a ventilated attic system is just reiterated here in this section, because that section R402.2.3 has actually changed in the 2021 IECC to not, even if you're using spot ventilation in your soffits, you're required to have continuous attic eave baffles so that the ventilation air doesn't bypass the baffle. So it's important, I think, to have it here in this section of the table as well. I don't know if there are any questions in that section. We can move on to the above grade walls. So with regards to above grade walls, walls itself is not a defined term, but above grade walls is a defined term. So that probably should actually be italicized there. You would think that it wouldn't be that difficult to understand, but the junction of the top plates and the drywall adjacent to unconditioned spaces has actually been a difficult area to get consistency of application in the field. Some builders that I've worked with, and I imagine others have worked with as well, have interpreted that drywall to top plate connection that needs to be air sealed. They've interpreted it as just being if you're thinking of your house as a box, the 4 exterior walls, rather than every top plate that's adjacent to the unconditioned space, which is the real intent of this application here. That the drywall be sealed to the top plate at all junctures where it's connected to the unconditioned space. And then the junction of the plates to the subfloor on exterior walls separating conditioned space from unconditioned space is another area that wasn't adequately described in the in this section as an area that needs to be sealed, but that makes and ensures that builders are successful at achieving the 3 air changes requirement. Air permeable insulation is insulation that doesn't stop the movement of air, and it needs to be enclosed on 6 sides or enclosed in a cavity so that it can actually trap the pocket of air that's needed to create the R value that the material is claiming that it is. Building thermal envelope is a defined term, so instead of calling it exterior, there's a move to using the defined term there. And then corners and headers it's been required by this table that they be insulated corners and insulated headers, but it's been wrapped into one sentence that's been made confusing and I think made it so that it's been ignored largely. The corners I believe, are getting insulated now, but headers still are not consistently being insulated headers in the market. So I think breaking it out specifically makes sense, and hopefully we'll get better enforcement and compliance in the field there. Are there any questions on that section?
Real quick, Robbie, you said separate corners and headers being separated out. Is this how it exists in the IECC? Or is this new language down here?
I'm sorry, yes, the header should be underlined. You're correct.
Okay. This whole item here.
Yeah. You can see that in the paragraph above where it says corners and exterior, it used to say and headers of framed walls. So headers there was a requirement in the past to insulate that header, but now it's been broken out to be more clear.
Hey, Robbie, why did you strike knee walls shall be sealed?
Oh, I'm sorry. Knee walls shall be sealed has been stricken because there's another proposal to add knee walls as a separate component and also a R402 requirement section as well. Okay. Because knee walls are significantly complex assemblies that I believe should be addressed separately.
Thank you.
Windows, skylights, and doors. There's never been a true installation requirement in this table for windows, skylights, and doors. So this language has been added. There. floors separating conditioned from unconditioned space, again, is trying to utilize that language to be clear that we're installing things to get separation between conditioned and unconditioned space. The air barrier shall be air sealed to maintain continuity at the edges of the floor system. So the new section, the R402.2.7 section of the code, that requirement section of the code, talks about 3 different ways that you can install insulation in the floor assembly. 2 of those ways bring the insulation off of the subfloor above the floor, which means that the rim joist of that floor system that really needs to be airtight and sealed well there. So that's why it's been pointed out on the air barrier, air sealing side of the table there. And then it just points you back to the floor insulation installation options in the R402.2 side of the insulation side of the table there. Again, air permeable insulation needs to be enclosed for it to work. Showers, tubs, and fireplaces. So I think it was the 2012 IECC that somehow the reference to fireplaces and the void area behind fireplaces was, I think, inadvertently removed from the code. So this is an attempt to add that back into the language of the code to ensure that you have proper alignment of your air barrier system and your insulation system in your building thermal envelope to define that continuity properly there. Let's see, tubs and shower drain traps. This is a new requirement, but there's a significant amount of air leakage that happens through the drain traps. You'll see some builders already beginning to air seal that drain trap underneath tubs and showers, but this would make it a requirement. And then fireplace doors, ensuring that we have airtight doors as is required by our 402.4.2. And then just a simplification of the language in the insulation installation section there. Electrical communication boxes and other equipment boxes, housings, and whatnot. We had the benefit of this section of this table going through the 2024 IECC before we're hearing it here in Denver. And this proposal, or this section of the table, changed to align with what happened in the 2024 cycle there. The objective here is that we're not just talking about electrical boxes, we're talking about housing for electrical equipment. So it'd be similar, so something like a bath fan housing, for example, would be included, and that we need to seal those boxes and housing and enclosures that penetrate through the air barrier to the element that they're penetrating through. That has been a requirement in the past. It just hasn't been as straightforward and clear as it is now, I believe. All concealed openings in boxes, housings, and enclosures shall be sealed. So you're seeing in the field now an electrical box on an exterior wall. If it's not an airtight box, that they're actually foaming the back of the box there. So you're getting less ability for air with moisture in it to migrate into the wall. And then if there's a leak directly to the outside, any leakage from inside to outside through electrical boxes, because the box itself is being sealed and the box to the surface it's penetrating is being sealed. That enables us to get the continuity of the air barrier, which is talking about in that second or the third kind of block in this air barrier side, is that we're trying to ensure that we have continuity of the air barrier system around the boxes. And if you can't maintain that continuity, then you have the option of using an airtight box that's called out in R402.4.6. And then making sure that the boxes are insulated around properly in the insulation section. The HVAC section here is talking about all supplied boots need to be sealed to the surface that they're penetrating. This is an issue that Energy Stars brought forward that the code hasn't addressed until right now, that it's not only important that the boot gets sealed to the surface that it's penetrating, if it's penetrating through the building envelope, like an unventilated attic, or I'm sorry, a ventilated attic and conditioned space. But if it's penetrating through the drywall from conditioned space to conditioned space, it increases the performance of the HVAC system to ensure that all the air is entering the room and not hitting a diffuser and going back into a stud wall cavity, or if it's on the return side, pulling air from a stud wall cavity there. HVAC supply and return register boots located in the building envelope need to be insulated properly. And this is just trying to help ensure that we're getting insulation bearing that boot or surrounding that boot if it's located in an attic or floor system. And then the last one here is common walls. Common walls has been a part of this table. These are walls between townhouses and duplexes, for example. But there's been some testing and some listing of materials that now can be used in these common wall assemblies to air seal these assemblies. And so that this is a recognition that those products have gone through UL testing and are now available, and they're actually listed in the 5 area separation walls that are used in townhouses and duplexes there. So this is pointing people to that section, because these common walls are so leaky, it's very difficult to air seal and do it properly and ensure that you're getting that 3 air changes per hour requirement for townhouses and duplexes. And then insulation materials as well are listed and how they're installed and whatnot. So it made sense to add that section in on the insulation installation side as well. So that was a lot to look at here, but the overall goal is to ensure that this table is utilized well in the field by the trade partners and builders that are using it, to ensure that they're meeting their 3 air changes requirement, and to ensure that it's understandable for proper enforcement as well.
Robbie, I'll be the first to jump in and say this is really excellent extension and an elaboration and clarification for this table. So I really appreciate you putting the time. I'm sure that was no small task to go into each one of these sections. So thank you. I think it looks really good.
Thank you.
Yes.
I
and
had,
I'll-
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I just have one question about the fireplace one. It references new wood burning fireplaces, and the section referenced is for new wood burning fireplaces, and currently new wood burning fireplaces aren't allowed in Denver. So I didn't know if this would be good to just leave in there, I guess, for retrofit or, yeah, if it wasn't new construction. But I just don't know how that would apply. And I don't know if we need that clarification in there, if the fireplaces, new wood burning fireplaces aren't allowed.
Chuck, is there ever any exception or alternative to that? Do projects ever go through an admin mod or anything that you're aware of? I know this is on the residential side, but.
Yeah, and actually it's kind of awkward the way it's in our code, because the prohibition is actually in our amendments in the commercial side, but it's applied across the all building types. And no, there's not been a wood burning exception that I'm aware of for this. The only thing that's allowed is pellet stoves, essentially, that are EPA rated.
Right, and I mean, currently natural gas are still installed.
Yeah, you can convert, but this section referenced here is only for wood burning. So a natural gas fireplace wouldn't fall under the section reference there.
Yeah, I wonder if we should just tweak the language that's right here on this screen, and instead of referencing the requirements of 40242, maybe we use a little more generic terminology for tight fitting doors or something like that. I mean, I understand what you're trying to get at, Robbie. I don't know if the UL 127 is specific to wood burning fireplaces. I'll take a look. It's just for factory built fireplaces. So we could still reference is still relevant of to UL 127, just not to R 40242.
Eric, you said UL
127.
Would it make sense to say fireplace doors shall have tight fitting flue dampers or I'm sorry, fireplaces shall have tight fitting flue dampers or doors?
Listed in accordance with UL 127, or and be listed in accordance with UL 127.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep, I'm with you there.
That's really why it was pointing to the R 402.4.2 section.
Sorry, Robbie, can you shall have tight fitting
Flue dampers
or doors.
Yep.
and comply with the requirements of UL 127?
And be listed in accordance with. And then you can delete the requirements. And then flue is FLUE in this case. Yep, seems good.
I had a question about insulated corners. And I guess my perspective is more from, above code applications where you're trying to induce people to adopt them. And so the question is, why not a total R value for the corner as opposed to the material being specified with an R value? And my question is, because it's so helpful to have that additional stud as a nailer running parallel to that side of the wall that ends up being basically 4 inches. So in other words, it's hard to achieve a a full fill in that corner. And then you have to use drywall clips or, you know, something of that nature. It's a little bit harder from a constructability standpoint.
Yeah, but you can do a 3-stud corner, for example, to, I think, overcome that issue that you're pointing out.
So to have that extra stud right there at that point where you need it for the drywall.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah. And the three per inch is language that's in the existing IECC, and that's in recognition that the greater IECC is looking at climate zones where 2x4 walls are still allowed.
Mm.
So they didn't go to a specific R value because of that. We could go to a specific R value here, but I'm not sure that is needed.
Understood.
Robbie, I had a question, and maybe this isn't such a big deal, but I've noticed a couple places where it says shall be enclosed. Like, is that like specific enough? What it like if it's paper face, you know, enough, or I'm just
Yeah.
had that thought as we were going through it.
So that language is used specifically because on a national scale, people really have not liked the 6-sided direction. So they'll say, well, a cavity, it might not be 6-sided, it might be 8, it might be 10, I don't know, it might be something more. And then encapsulation was also used, but in the past, and a lot of folks have argued against that word as well. So it's kind of come down to ensuring that it's enclosed. We could add a definition in the Denver code if you feel like it's needed to what enclosed means from an installation perspective.
I mean, I'm not sure if I need that specific definition, more on CPD side, if they think they need some clarification there. If not, then I think we can probably move on.
My opinion would be that it's a generally understood term. So I wouldn't have a hard time debating whether or not something is enclosed just from a logic standpoint, I don't think. And the intent is clear. So I'd probably just leave it be.
That was my feeling as well. Hey, Mike, I'm wondering, I see you nodding, so that's good, but I'm wondering, do you run into this issue more on the residential side, maybe just from an understanding perspective from the designer's drawings?
No, I haven't seen any problems with this, and I would agree that leaving enclosed as stated is sufficient.
Sounds good.
I am acknowledging we do only have like 3 minutes left of this meeting. So I don't know if we want to continue this conversation, if there's more to discuss, or if we want to move this forward. Just want to put that out there.
I think this looks good. I think that the additions and clarifications that have been made are much needed. So I would advocate for moving this forward.
Is there anyone opposed to that? right. Well, we will move this one forward. Thanks, Robbie. I know we asked you to combine a lot of proposals into this one too, so appreciate that. And we just had one left on the agenda today, so I won't promise that we'll get that one next time. I think we're going to focus on commercial next time, but we'll make sure we get that in these offline hearings.
Yeah. And Eric, you actually, I was going to propose that we not look at this last one because Eric and I still need to come together on this one.
Yeah, I
With
had taken a look
modification.
at it, Robbie, and I think I have a little more feedback, just in terms of the first section there. So I'll reach out to you directly, Robbie.
Great.
I think you had sent me a follow-up email on it, right?
Yes.
Yep, I'll get back to you.
Great. Well, that is all we had for today. Thank you everyone for this conversation. I thought it was really helpful and moved us forward a lot. The next one, I think it's 2 weeks from now. And again, I think we're going to be focusing on the commercial side. So John from Nebraska will be involved, and I'll try to get the agenda up earlier so that we can have some reviews before we meet. And if there's any questions, feel free to email myself or Eric or Christy too, but you can email me first and I'll filter it through. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.